Okay, guys, can everyone hear me? I think we're gonna start now. So make sure you mute all your mic before we start, okay? So everyone can hear me? Okay, good. Okay, so for today we will talk about the basic wedding cakes, okay? So as you can see in the picture, so as you all know that in the basic wedding cake, you don't have a real cake. It's all about the styrofoams. Okay, then you have a sugar paste, you have the flower string work, and then all those piping. Okay, for the wedding cakes. So before I start to explain you guys what is pastillage, royal icing, and sugar paste, do you have any question regarding about the basic wedding cakes? So you can type your question in the chat box before I start to begin with the summaries, okay? So do anyone have any question about the Okay, so Stephanie asked, can pastillage be stored in chiller? Okay, I don't recommend to store the pastillage in the chiller. First, what will happen is that condensation will happen. Then when you use your pastillage, and it's gonna be very sticky. Okay, so basically you can just keep the pastillage in the room temperature is fine. Okay, not necessary to keep inside a chiller. So what is CMC powder and why did we use it? For Kriti, this one later I'll explain because I have some PowerPoint for the CMC. So the gelatin for from CL, the gelatin for the sugar paste, how do I make that from the gelatin that I bought? I don't understand what do you mean by gelatin for the sugar paste? How do I make that? You don't have to make the gelatin. You can actually buy from the ingredient shop. Okay, as long as you need to bloom them with the cold water, then it's fine. So Kriti asks difference between Tylos and CMC. Actually, both is the same. Tylos is the brand name, okay, for CMC. So both of them are the same thing. Okay. Okay, so here another question. Hello, chef. Can we store CMC solution and how many days can it be stored, or should we make it every day a small batch? Yes, actually the CMC solution can keep it in the chiller. Okay, you can keep for 1 week or 2 weeks, no problem. Okay, you don't have to make them every batch because it's like a glue. Okay, how to store fondant decoration? Should I place the figure just before handover to client? Usually what we do about fondant decoration, the problem is that you just keep it in the AC room, okay? So next, till we saw all the decor for the wedding cake, can we also have a live demo for veg or non-veg, how to do the cake with recipe, please? Okay, so for vegan or for non-vegan, okay, it's not in this class, but we do have a session for eggless and vegan later on. Okay, thank you. Okay, it can be in an AC room open, and it can be stored in a closed container as well. Okay, it's depending on you. Okay, AC room open, no problem. In closed container also can. Okay, so any more question? Okay, so Xiao asked, if you want to make a real wedding cake, what cake recipe would be suitable for it? Okay, so in the advanced wedding cake, actually you will learn how to make a real wedding cake. So for me, I always prefer to use a pound cake, okay, not chiffon base, not recommend those very soft type of sponges, because after that you still need to wrap with the fondant and then decoration and everything, like 2 tiers, 3 tiers. I would always recommend a pound cake for the wedding cake. Okay, so how to make royal icing without egg whites? Okay, so there is this thing called meringue powder. Okay, you can actually substitute, you can actually use meringue powder instead of egg whites. Okay, so any more question for this one? Aquafaba can be used instead of egg white. Okay, this one I'll get back to you first, because I never tried using aquafaba. Okay. Is the meringue powder vegetarian? No, meringue powder consists of egg white powder inside. For how long can meringue be stored? What you mean? What kind of meringue? There's no meringue in the wedding cake. Okay. Ling Jufu, can you clarify your question? Should the ratio of meringue powder be the same as egg white ratio in the royal icing? I think there is a okay, so for meringue powder, right, there is certain percentage of the water and the powder together to use them. Okay, so for me, I for different type of meringue powder, they requires different uh amount of water for it. Okay, so if you want to use meringue powder based royal icing, you actually can Google a lot. There is a lot of recipe using the meringue powder. Okay, so you are a vegetarian, and any vegetarian substitute for royal icing. Okay, I'll get back to you about the vegetarian royal icing. Okay, so for Shita, what is the difference between Saraceno modeling paste and other paste like fondant? Okay, this is the first time I heard this Saraceno modeling paste. I will Google and check. Okay, for the Saraceno modeling paste, right, I will get back to you because I never encountered this thing before. Okay, and royal icing X. So in royal icing, X acts as a binding agent. You can say something like that, okay, because you it's like meringue, you know, egg whites, you can trap a lot of air inside. Okay, so you can so at the end of the day, you will see your icing is very white and very firm. Okay, so any more question for the wedding cakes? If not, I can go through a short like what is pastillage, what is royal icing, what is sugar paste, what is CMC or tylose powder. Okay, so what is pastillage? So in simple term, pastillage is a type of icing made of sugar. So it's a paste like a sugar paste or modeling paste, but unlike other paste, it dries extremely hard. Okay, so actually pastillage is recommended to do like, you know, you wrap a styrofoam, you can wrap with the pastillage. Okay, but you're not encourage them to eat the pastillage because it's very blunt. Okay, and then why we use pastillage? For Stephanie, later we'll go through what is gum paste because it's under the category with the sugar paste. Okay, so why use pastillage? Because pastillage dries very quickly. If you are in a hurry, pastillage will set far faster than gum paste. Okay, so pastillage is a very hot, strong and hard, which means it keeps its shapes and won't sag. Okay, pastilla does better in humid condition than its others, its softer counterparts. Having a beach wedding, pastilla is okay with that. So actually, pastilla can do really good with humid condition or the high humidity environment. Okay, so pastilla is also sturdy enough to gently stand. You can buff surface smooth with, which you can't do with fondant or gum paste. So usually after you did your pastilla work, you cut out the shape that you want, you actually can sand it to buff the surface smoother, okay, with a sandpaper. Okay, so Shita asks, can we microwave pastilla if it's too stiff or hard? Okay, yes, you can microwave pastilla in the microwave, but I recommend to put the pastilla in a Ziploc bag and you keep inside a microwave, okay, and you maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you need to check, okay. So the reason I don't recommend to microwave quite often because it will start to dry out, okay. So in a Ziploc bag, you actually can keep the moisture inside of your pastilla, okay. So next, pastilla is sturdy enough to be pastilla is probably not the best choice for an overall coating for a cake. It's too firm and have somewhat blunt flavor. That's why I don't recommend to wrap pastilla on a real cake, okay. But for certain decorating project, it's really helped you to create an inspiring rope. Okay, it can be anything. You can make a castle, church, or whatever with pastelage. Okay, so what is royal icing? So it's actually hard white icing made from icing sugar and egg white. Okay, so basically if you are doing for royal icing, it can be in a wedding cake, it can be in cookies, like royal icing cookies. Okay, so if you are doing royal icing, right, please make sure you are using pasteurized egg white. Okay, if it's on a cookies or wedding cake that need to consume by people to prevent salmonella. Okay, so why use royal icing? Can also produce decoration for your cakes by making them on wax paper or an acetate sheet. So if you see the video for the basic wedding cake, we actually use a royal icing, okay, on top of the acetate sheet, okay, and transfer to your cake when it's dry. Okay, so as you can see the process of how to draw on top of the acetate and let it dry and then remove them from the acetate sheet. So there's another way, royal icing to make delicate designs such as lace, string work, bead work, trellis, eyelet lace, cross stitching. You can also pipe trellis and lattice work. Okay, so for royal icing, you can actually do a lot of things. You can do string work like the one in the basic. You can pipe bead works. Okay, you can do cross stitching, eyelet lace. Okay, anything with royal icing. Okay, actually royal icing, besides that, you actually can flavor them, okay, like with mint or whatever, and also you can actually color them, okay, with liquid gel color, okay, or powder color. It works for royal icing. Okay, if you want a colorful colors for the royal icing. Okay, any question for the royal icing, guys? Okay, if not, we'll go to the sugar paste. Okay, so sugar paste is a sweet edible sugar dough usually made from sucrose, which means sugar, and glucose. It is sometimes referred as a sugar gum or gum paste. So actually gum paste and sugar paste is the same. Okay, so Paya that asks how to store royal icing. So usually if I have leftover royal icing, I'll put in a container and then I will wet a piece of tissue and put on top of the royal icing contact surface to prevent my royal icing from getting dry. And then I'll cover with the container and keep inside the chiller. Okay, so the next day, usually after storage of your royal icing, it will start to collapse. Okay, it will start to collapse a lot. And then what you need to do is just put your royal icing back into the mixer and then you just paddle until you get the consistency that you need.
Okay. So is it safer to use meringue powder instead of egg white to avoid salmonella infection? Yes, yes, of course. Okay. Or unless you have another option, which is pasteurized egg white, like what I mentioned just now, to avoid salmonella infection. Okay. So any more question for the royal icing? Okay, no problem. So next we'll go for the sugar paste. So actually sugar paste and gum paste are the same, okay? But it's not the same with fondant, okay? So gum paste is a really pliable sugar dough mixed with gums, okay? Which makes it easy to shape like modeling clay. It can be tinted, painted, or dusted with decorating dust. It can be rolled very thin to use for making delicate shape of molded into figurines, trees, and animals. Pieces can be glued together to make large standing ones. Okay, so for gum paste, right, it's very different from fondant. From fondant, right, you cannot roll it very, very thin. Okay, like a piece of as thin as a paper. But for sugar paste or gum paste, you actually can roll it really thin until it's slightly translucent. Okay, so usually gum paste is very pliable, more pliable compared to fondant, and it's very easy for you to work with figurines, or you want to do flower with it. Okay, it works the same. Okay, so usually after gum paste, for the basic wedding cakes, for the flower, we use the same gum paste that we use to coat the styrofoam. Okay, so you actually, after you finish your roses, your daisy, your arum lily, your leaves, you can actually powder them, or you can use some dusting, some decorating dust, like pink color, green color, okay, to give some shadings to the gum paste on your flower, so it make it more real. Okay, any question about the sugar paste, or we call it the gum paste? Okay, how many difference between sugar paste and gum paste? Literally they are the same. Okay, they refer as gum paste, and or we call it sugar paste. Okay, it's the same. How many days this homemade fondant or gum paste can survive if make it extra quantity? Okay, so what we do with the extra quantity of fondant or gum paste, or you can, what do you do with the extras, right? You can actually put in a ziploc bag. Okay, make sure you just keep in a ziploc bag, and you seal it, and you just keep it in room temperature. It's fine. Okay, so next time, the next day when you want to use it, you just need to knead it a little bit, and then you can use it straight away. Okay, I saw a video of pasteurizing eggs at home. Is it okay to do that? Yes, you can. Okay, actually there is another method of doing it, is Swiss meringue. Okay, they bain marie the egg white with the icing sugar, then they whip up. It works also, no problem. I find that fondant gets sticky when it's a rainy day. Is it the same with sugar paste, and is there any way I can avoid it? Yes, because the problem is with that, sugar is attracted to humidity. Okay, so once they are in contact with humidity, like especially rainy day, they will tend to become sticky, and it's normal. Okay, so the only way you can avoid it is you can keep it in the airtight containers. Okay, airtight containers, and you keep in the room temperature is fine already. Airtight ziploc bag is fine. Okay, what is the best way to paste the fondant on top of the cake? You mean wrap the cake, is it? Ling Jufu. Yes, okay. So actually you can use topping glaze. You have apricot glaze, you can with you can use like there's one more topping glaze, apricot glaze, neutral glaze is fine. Okay, to stick, but it's just a thin layer, guys. Okay, thin layer on the cake. Okay, you use a brush, you brush a thin layer of the apricot glaze, and then only you put it with the fondant. Okay, So what does pasteurized meringue means? I'm new to this. It'll be good. Okay, so not pasteurized meringue, but actually you pasteurize eggs have salmonella. Okay, so we actually don't pasteurize them. When you eat, you have stomach ache. Okay, or maybe worse. Okay, so the reason why like for royal icing it needs to use egg white. Okay, so that's why I recommend if you use pasteurized egg white, you are more than safe. You can pasteurize your own egg white, you are no problem with it. Or you can use a meringue powder as a substitute of the egg whites powder. If you substitute the fresh egg white. Okay, so the reason why we need to pasteurize, which means there's no salmonella infection. Okay, are we good now? Okay. So next we'll talk about CMC powder, or we call Tylos. Actually are the same. Tylos is just the brand of the name. Brand name is called Tylos. So CMC stands for carboxyl metal cellulose. That's why it's called CMC. It's added to fondant in order to make it easier to work, model with, and make it dry quicker. Okay, so actually CMC powder actually to make your fondant slightly more like once you shape into like figurine. Let's say I'm doing a teddy bear today, I make sure you need to hold the shape of the bear, so I add a little bit amount of CMC powder, let it dry quicker so they won't go out of shape faster. Okay, so what is the difference between CMC and GMS? GMS powder. Okay, GMS, I never heard of the GMS powder. Okay, so I will get back to you about the GMS. Okay, what is the replacement of quantity of egg white to meringue powder? This one is depends on the recipe and also depends on the meringue powder itself. Okay, it's a stabilizer powder. I think I need to do more research on the GMS powder, because in Malaysia we are using a CMC most of the time. Okay, so I'm not very familiar with GMS powder, so I need to do some research and get back to you. Okay, for the GMS powder. Okay, so if I want to make a wedding cake, how many days in advance can I cover the cake with fondant? After covering the cake with fondant, I have to store it at the room temperature. Not room temperature, make sure it's not hot, make sure it's AC room is most safer. So if you are using wrapping for a wedding cakes, okay, in advance, actually I recommend to wrap a layer of marzipan first before you wrapping a layer of fondant, because in your pound cakes or whatever cakes you have, that you have oil in it. Okay, there is a small there is a possibility the oils from the cake will transfer to the fondant. So to protect the oil from getting transferred to your fondant, I recommend for you to wrap a thin layer of marzipan to protect the cake. Okay, and then only you wrap with the fondant. Okay, okay, so CMC powder change the taste of fondant after mixing? No, no, no. Okay, it doesn't change the taste of the fondant. Okay, can you talk a bit about transporting cakes safely? Okay, for me, if you're like having a few tiers of cakes, right? Okay, make sure you don't stick them all together and then you transport them together. Okay, so I would prefer to have each tier have your own cake box. Okay, you have different tiers in a different cake box. Don't assemble yet. Once you reach the destination, then you only assemble the cakes. Okay, so that's the tips for transporting the cake safely. Okay, like some things that is very fragile, like your flour made of gum paste. Okay, you don't want it shatters during the transporting, so make sure you try to keep the flour separately first before you start to assemble when you reach the destination. Okay, how to make sure the upper cake doesn't sink in the lower cake in three tiers cake. Actually, they have this thing like a stand, like we call, is it novel? Okay, I need to check in Google, is it called novel or dowel? Okay, for the cakes. Okay, it's called, yeah, it's called dowel. A pin fitting into a hole in a it's like you, I need to show you first. Okay, just a second, I show you what is the dowel actually used for cakes. Okay, so if you can see in the picture here, they use this kind of, you have the wooden dowel, you have the plastic dowel. Okay, you actually use this to prevent your cakes from how, what do you say, sinking. Okay, so they basically use these like cake dowels like this. Okay, for the cakes, yeah, it's called dowel. Okay, so okay, so you can even use buttercream frosting to the cake before putting the fondant. Yes, you can use the buttercream frosting also before you put the fondant. It works also. Yes. What do you mean by glazing the cake? What kind of glaze? You want to glaze the pound cake with what? Okay, what is the maximum number of dowels that we should use? Okay, it's depending on how many tiers you have in the wedding cakes. Okay, so of course, the more dowels, I mean, like the more support you have, the more stable your cake will be. Okay. Can you recommend some color combination for wedding cakes that match well with each other? Okay, actually, for wedding cake, it's actually a preference. I mean, individual preference. You know, some people like it pastel color. Some people like it stripe. I mean, like wow, like really striking colors. It depends on individual, like what your customer wants. There is like no right or wrong of using what color you want. Okay, glazing like we do for entremet. Okay, but if you, it doesn't make sense, you know, if you want to glaze like entremet, is actually for mousse cake. Okay, you don't glaze a new, I mean like a mirror glaze on a wedding cake. Okay, so for wedding cake, usually they are actually coated with either buttercreams with fondant. Okay, this kind of thing, but not with a neutral glaze, mirror glaze. Okay. Okay, so maximum number of dowels in three tiers cake for the lowermost layer. Okay, lowermost layer, I think 4 to 6 number of dowel is more than enough already. Okay, do we need to put a wooden base on top of each cake layer for support? Then it's like this one, you saw the disc, Okay, some dowels come with this plastic, or we call PVC acrylic boards. Okay, you can have the acrylic board on top. Okay, like this one, you have the acrylic board, or then you can have like this one. Okay, like this one also. Okay, of course recommend to put a base on top of each and every cake to make sure they hold the structure well enough. Okay, any more question, guys? Can we make a wedding cake 3-tier without fondant? If yes, then any tips for that? Yes, you can do without fondant, like buttercream. Yes.
Okay. Which type of color should be used to color the fondant? Okay, so I give you an example. We can actually use this we call liquid gel. Oh, sorry, liquid gel food coloring. Okay, so you can use this. Okay, make sure it's water based. Okay, or we call, yeah, water based. Okay, you can use this type, or Apka always use Chef Master a lot. Okay, because you can get very consistent product, and you can use powder color water the base. Yeah, like this one. Okay, this is in powder form, but there is water base for it. Okay, so um what are your tips that we should keep in our mind while stacking a 3-tier cakes? Okay, okay, so most important about the 3 tiers cakes, right? Make sure your dowels, okay, it should be almost the same height as your cake. Okay, make sure it's not too tall or not too short. Okay, so this is prevent to make sure your cakes is very stable enough. Okay. So there is one question, putting gold color on fondant. Okay, so usually for gold color on top of fondant,
I mean, like mixing it to gold color is a bit impossible. So what I can recommend is like spraying airbrush. Okay, so you actually airbrush this gold color. We have this airbrush gold color. Okay, you can have this kind of thing where you spray on the fondant to make it gold. Okay, so each tier have separate cake box. Don't assemble together, assemble at location. Yes, 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 Susan. Yes, thank you, Susan, for helping to answer. So what type of colors do you recommend for a good look in cakes fondant? For me, personally, I prefer what do you call pastel color, something very soft, very light. Okay, so because wedding cake is more likely to be something more harmony. Okay, I prefer a lot with more to peach color. Okay, peach color. Can we hand paint on fondant? Yes, yes, yes. You can do a hand paint on fondant, like you want to draw flowers. Okay, you want to do anything we can use with the color fondant. Okay, for hand paint, I prefer gel. Okay, I always prefer gel color. Okay, for hand paint fondant. Okay, how do we stick the cake on base to uh, ensure safe transfer? How do we stick the cake on the base? Okay, usually I just use the coating, like if you are coating your cakes with uh buttercream, then I will just use the same buttercream and just apply a thin layer on the bottom of the cake board and just stick the cake with it. It works well for me. Okay. Have you made any three-tier cakes without fondant, like chocolate ganache or buttercream? Do you face any difficulty while stacking them? Okay, so I only try it with buttercream. Okay, buttercream, but make sure still you need to left your buttercream cakes coated. Make sure they are hard enough. Okay, I usually always keep them in the chiller first before I stack them. Okay, keep in the chiller. So any more question? Also, I like the idea of palette knife 3D painting with buttercream. Yes, yes, yes. It's quite a trend now also with the palette knife, because there is a lot of like drawings with 3D with palette knife. You can do roses, you can do different things. Yes, I think it's something really nice with the palette knife idea. Yes, flower. So any suggestion of gold airbrush color? Can we use it without airbrush put in to a spray bottle? No, it's not possible to put it in a spray bottle. Or another way is that you paint that with a paintbrush. Okay, but the outlook is not as smooth as airbrushing. Okay, I can just say that. Usually I use this like this emery color, gold sheen color. Okay, I will put in the airbrush machine, I will spray it, and then it actually can give me really nice sheen, and it's very even. Because if you use a brush, there is a problem is that you sometimes like you will over brush it, and then it's like few stroke of the lining from the brush. So I don't really recommend to use brushes, but airbrush is a good thing. If you are doing mostly on wedding cakes and stuff like that, I always prefer airbrush, airbrush machine. You can invest one airbrush machine. So airbrush machine brand, for me in Malaysia, we only have from Beshi Pro, I think. And let me check the guys, let me check airbrush. Actually, there is two type of airbrush machine. There is a 2 tank and also 1 tank of airbrush machine. Okay, so the one we use is yeah, this one. It's called master airbrush. Okay, you can have this one. This is a single tank one. So actually, if you are using for not heavy duty, right, you can use it just for airbrush. You can use a single tank, it's more than enough. Okay, to spray airbrush on fondant, do we need to freeze the cake before spraying? No, you don't have to freeze the cake to spray with the airbrush. No, it's not necessary. AC room temperature is fine. You can airbrush it. Okay. Okay, any tips on how to perfect edges and smooth the buttercream on the cake? So buttercream, for me, after you emulsify the butter already, I always change it to a paddle, low speed, to even out all the bubble. The longer you beat, the lesser the bubble you have inside the buttercream. So you can get a very smooth buttercream. Okay, how to perfect the edges is that you need to practice more. Really, it's about more about practice. Okay, for the perfect edges. sometimes my buttercream is sugary. Are you using like sugar syrup on the buttercream, like Italian meringue type of buttercream? Icing sugar. Okay, do you sieve the icing sugar? Like make sure it's sifted so there are not lumps together. For me, if you want to keep in the fondant cake in fridge, it happens to me also. It will have condensations. It will be wet because of the temperature shock, because room temperature and the chiller temperature is different, so it will start to have condensation happen. So what do you do is the fondant cake, you try to keep in an airtight container before you keep it in the fridge. Okay, airtight. Okay, like you cover it in a box or whatever, make sure it's just airtight before you put it in the fridge. Okay. Okay, scrapers for buttercream. Yes, I do use chocolate scraper. For me, it works also. Plastic scraper also, it works also. What are the reasons for fondant to break or crack? Okay, so reason what happened your fondant if crack or what it means is too dry, which means it's exposed too much or you use too much cornstarch to your fondant. Okay, so what are the reason, I mean how to fix it for the break or crack fondant? So actually what you can do is, actually when it start to crack or dry, right, I usually don't use it. Or if it's small amount, I usually just discard it. If it's really big amount, what I do is that I mix with a fresh fondant. Okay, you mix it with a fresh fondant and the old one, so you try to work it out. Okay, so I draw eyes on the figurine before the black color smears. Are you using the gel color pen, the edible pen? If you are using the edible pens, I think it won't smear. If you are doing your own black color with black liquid gel or whatever, I think it will smear easily. I think yes, we do have buttercream recipes. I think it's Italian meringue base. You can go to the for the cupcakes recipe. Okay, the cupcake recipe, we do have Italian meringue based buttercream. Okay, so you go to Akasha online, you search for basic, and then you search for basic French pastry. In the cupcakes, we do have the buttercream recipe in it. Okay, is there any other product instead of shortening to lose the fondant little bit? Okay, I don't use shortening in fondant. Okay, when my fondant gets slightly more sticky, I'll use cornstarch. Okay, when for it. Okay, I always only using cornstarch for my fondant. I don't use any shortening. If I'm dealing with gum paste, yes, I'm using shortening, but fondant no. Okay. Yes. Never use flavored gel black color to draw eyes. Okay, you should get something like this edible pen ink. Okay, then I think you should get something like this edible ink marker. You can draw it. Okay, so they actually are very thin tips. You can draw really nice eyes with it. Okay, but oh, it's a brand called My Flavor. I think let me Google My Flavor. You mean this brand? Oh, no, usually, right, this kind of gel paste, right, they contain more water contents in than those edible ink marker. So for like drawing like details like eyelashes, eyebrow or whatever for the figurines, I always prefer to use the edible ink marker. Okay, can we use squid ink as coloring? I think I don't recommend to use squid ink coloring, as I think it will give unpleasant smells on the fondant. Okay, so I don't recommend using any squid ink as coloring. Okay, so any more question, guys? Okay, so which type of base, water or powder of gel is best for fondant? For me, I always use gel color. I don't use powder color for my fondant, unless for dusting, yes, I will use. But for coloring my fondant, I will use liquid gel chef master. That's it. Is dust color is fine to use on fondant figurine? You mean like color the fondant, or is just like for touching, like for blushing and stuff like that? If for blushing, like for coloring a little bit or tint tint the fondant a little bit, yes, you can use the dust color. How to paint on entremet that have been glazed? I never tried. Okay, and I don't think it will work, especially like mirror glaze or neutral glaze, and then you want to paint on top of it. No, I never tried. Yes, just blushing, yes, you can use the dust color. Is Italian meringue buttercream suitable for our tropical weather compared to American buttercream? Um, if you're using Italian meringue buttercream, yes, you can, but try to keep it in the AC room. Okay, don't just leave it outside under the sun. Okay, no. Okay, AC room to room temperature, yes, is still okay. Any precaution to take for chandelier cakes? Don't know if this is an advanced topic. Yes, okay, for chandelier cake, you might just have to wait for until the advanced topic, so I'll explain more about it, okay? How to make gold lustrate dust into liquid like paint? Okay, usually I add gold dust with vodka. Yes, gold dust in vodka and use, yes, vodka. uh Ethanol, you can use ethanol. Okay, anything with alcohol, yes, it can. Ethanol will evaporate, so you don't have it will evaporate eventually, so you don't have to non-alcoholic. Ethanol is almost 97%. Okay, so actually whatever you put in, it will dry very fast and evaporate, so you don't left any alcohol on the cakes. Okay. May I know how to transport entremet safely? I try to put cream at the bottom. It split during transport. You mean you stick the entremet with the cake board with the cream? Is it what you mean, Teh Hui Xin? I don't usually put cream on the to stick with the cake board. So I usually put glucose. They are much more stickier. Okay, and it grip really well with the entremet base, so it doesn't slide everywhere during the transportation. Okay, glucose is the best. Trimoline works also. Okay, but glucose less costly. Okay, any more question, guys? Yes, of course, glucose make the cake hard to cut. You don't put a big amount of glucose, okay? Usually I put in a piping bag, cut a small tip, and then you just make it a swirl, okay? Make it a swirl on the cake board, then only put the cake. Make sure it's just a thin layer, guys, not one big dots of the glucose in the center and you stick the cake, okay? Can we add gold leaf or dusting to the fondant? Yeah, you can add gold leaf with dusting to the fondant. Yes, you can. Okay. So right now can only use non-alcoholic or non-vodka or ethanol as I'm 16 years old only. So do you know any non-alcoholic liquid to make it like a pain? Is not about you are 16 years old. Yes, I know, but actually you can just mix a small amount of ethanol into the gold dust, and ethanol is not consumable. Okay, ethanol is what we actually use to clean the polycarbonate molds for the bonbon. Okay, actually to kill bacteria also. Okay, it's not about consuming the ethanol. Yes. Okay, to make it more liquid so you can paint the gold dust. Okay. Okay, you're welcome, Mika. So guys, any more question for the basic wedding cake? Okay, so thank you for today for your time. And then is it you watched my live demo before I joined? Okay, that's great. Okay, you're more than welcome. Okay, sure. So stay safe, everyone. Okay, see you in the next section.